Good afternoon for April 18th, 2020. This is COVIDcast 42. I am your host, Rick Richards. Let's start the show. Yes, COVIDcast 42. COVIDcast 42 for April 18th, 2020. What a long, strange trip it's been already, right? Already going into, I guess, week 6. Next week's going to be week 6. But you know what? Life goes on. Life goes on. I was out and about with my little daughter today, going to the beach. I got to be honest. People are starting to break down the barriers a little bit. Social distancing still seems to be a thing, but I think people are like, no, sorry, man. I'm gonna get out. I got to get out. I got to do something, right? Like I say, life goes on. We had a puppy that was born. I'm going to do my very first shout out is going to be to our puppy who doesn't have a name yet. He was born just about 3 days ago, and we put down a deposit on this puppy, and the little guy is going to be with us in a couple months. And it got me to thinking. We've all have you ever had a special connection with one of your pets? Like most of us have had pets, not all of us, but most of us have had pets throughout a lot of our life, right? And sometimes it's a pet that, maybe it's a gerbil or something that you don't really connect with at all, right? But most of us at one time or another have had that special connection with a pet, right? Where just like with humans, you really can connect with this person, right? Or this animal. And maybe you remember their first day all the way up until their very last day. Maybe you remember the first time you saw them all the way up to the last time you saw them. Does that come to mind? Does that ring any bells? It's an amazing relationship that you actually can have with an animal. It's surprising. It's surprising how they can enter your life and they can just become such an incredibly positive part of your life, right? They can bring you up. They get you doing things. They get you off the couch, right? They get you out. You can't ignore them. You have to look after them. And all they ever want from you is, food and affection, basically, and to play. They have no ulterior motives. Animals are really something special in that respect. Can you think of a time when you had a pet and it really meant a lot to you? I think we've all had one of those situations, and we hope to have one of those again. So we're going to be welcoming the little fellow into the Richards house. Yeah, well, we don't have a name yet. We're still undecided on the name, right? But we are working on it. So let's start some shout outs. Actually, first, the COVIDcast is brought to you by Athletic Alliance. Oh man, the virtual background has given us some problems today. Athletic Alliance, Havoc, Hydro Pro, two of the best products. You can get them across the country in GNC. I just spilled my coffee. And select Popeyes. So let's get on to the shout outs. Shout out to Jackson and the Glitch Doctor, who did our catchy little intro. Shout out to Terry Jixer, who's the proud owner of the toilet paper. Gymnasium. Shout out to Julia. Super fans, Dwayne and Shar. The electric couple, we call them now, right? All the folks in Davyton, Jamaica. We're huge in Jamaica now. Producer Dave and Odell, special friend of the show, Lisa. And that makes up the shout outs. Did I forget somebody? I'm probably forgetting somebody. You know what? Comment. I get too many comments now in the Facebook page. So comment on the YouTube if you want a shout out or if you have a special shout out to somebody. We will try and accommodate it. Let's take a quick look at what is happening in the COVID world. I feel like the virus is kind of slowing down quite a bit. Just a gut feeling. I mean, the stats will kind of back this up a little bit. So we see the US has 737 total cases, closing in on 40,000 deaths. The death rate, though, has dropped quite a bit, if you notice. It's slowing down and slowing down quite a bit. The UK, also slowing down. UK over 15,000 deaths. France close to 20,000 fatalities, slowing down there. The rate, Spain looks like it's had a little bit of a bump up. It had dropped quite a bit, bumping up a little bit, but still lower than where it was. Italy, well down. Canada, we are moving up. Netherlands, Turkey. Turkey looks like they might be going through the peak problem. But other than that, I mean, Russia, they actually canceled the Victory Day parade. Like every May 9th in Russia, in Moscow, in Red Square, they have a massive parade celebrating their victory in World War II. And that is canceled this year, or postponed, I should say. It's not actually canceled, it's just postponed. And for them to postpone that parade, that is a big deal. And that's not something Putin wants to do, I can assure you. So anytime I get the vibe that this is some sort of government plot or that it may all be just fake or whatever, I see all the governments doing things that they don't want to do. Donald Trump did not want to close his hotels. He did not want the stock market to crash. Justin Trudeau did not want to close the borders. That was the last thing that guy wants to do. Even now, he's still trying to find ways to keep them open, right? Although the Canada-US border, the closure has been extended for another 30 days, which I think is kind of stupid if we're honest and we look at the cases, but hey, that's where it's at. And Putin has now shut down the Victory Day parade. So, and that's something I don't think he wanted to do. I know they had a lot of new machinery they wanted to show off this year. So, how are we looking in Canada? In Canada, we are looking at 33,366 total cases, more than half of which are in Quebec. Quebec has had 800 fatalities. Ontario's had 10,000 cases, 500 fatalities. So of the 1,470 deaths, 1,319 have come from Quebec and Ontario, probably more specifically Montreal and the Greater Toronto area. The GTA and Montreal, that's the problem, right? So, I mean, this has to be taken into consideration. BC, I mean, we're at 81 deaths, right? 2 months into this thing, more than 3 months. First case was the end of January, February, March. Yeah, almost 3 months. So, I mean, really, come on, guys. You know, BC and Alberta, we have 10% the death rate as Quebec and Ontario. BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba easily could be opened up right now. Easily, the Atlantic could as well. So I don't know, man. I'm getting a little bit disillusioned that there's no progress on that front. At least specific areas of the economy, I definitely think should be opened up. Coronavirus, Quebec counts 117 new deaths. Cases climbed to over 17,500. I would imagine that most of these new deaths are in long-term care homes. Let's see if that is the case. The COVID crisis has now claimed 805 lives in Quebec, additional 117 more Saturday. They're talking about tests. Montreal, there you go, remains the epicenter of the outbreak, counting over 8,000 cases, which accounts for nearly half of the cases in the province. Yeah, okay. You know what? This is definitely a large, crowded city problem. I mean, London is another hot spot, right? I believe Milan is another one. They don't really say, at least to the best that I can see, they don't really say 40 seniors at a residence. The Quebec government's monitoring some seniors at a residence, but they don't really specify where these deaths came from. So maybe it's a variety of places. But I mean, really, we are seeing, mostly the old folks' homes, right? Let's be honest about it. And one thing I have noticed, if you simply go on Global News, they used to have the coronavirus tracker at the top. Then they would have the coronavirus tracker. If you clicked on a story about it, it would come up on the banner, and now it's not. Now it's buried or absent altogether. I don't know where you find it now. So it just shows you, I mean, the story itself is kind of running out of steam and they're looking to move on to other things now, right? So that is the situation across Canada and across the world. And I really think that attention now needs to turn to the ways forward, right? The ways forward. But there's a lot of things we can examine out of this. You know, a lot of things we can appreciate too. Like, can you remember, I was thinking, I mean, the recommendation last week was for a staycation, right? And I was thinking of where I'd like to go when I finally get a chance to travel. And can you remember a time when you actually were on a vacation and, you know, think about what it was like? Like, can you remember how the sun felt if you're on, or how the water sounded if you're on a beach? You know, the smells, the feels, the sand, the sounds, all of that stuff. It's really nice to kind of think back to those sorts of moments and, you know, use that as motivation to go forward and know that at one point we will, barring complete lockdown and martial law for eternity, we will get a chance to travel and vacation once again. So we move forward, onward and upward, right? Right. It's interesting too. A lot of people are spending a lot of times, you know, watching shows, streaming shows. You know, is anybody else's internet really slow? Like my internet at home in the isolation chamber here, I'm okay. But when I am at home, man, I can't watch anything now. Anything I try to stream, it's just incredibly slow. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's watching just a ton of YouTube videos, and he's watching different speakers. He's watching people on sales, and you know, sort of self-improvement things. And he finds as he's watching these people, his mind starts to zero in, right? And he starts to notice very specific things. Like he starts to notice the outline of the computer, and he starts to notice the different shine and pattern on the keyboard. And he notices the resolution in the video, and the sound of the person's voice is it sort of really cuts through any other distractions that are around him. And his senses really kind of sharpen up and absorb different things around him. And I was listening to this, and I was listening to him describe it, and I could kind of see these things myself, right? So I thought that was really fascinating. And it kind of leads into today's topic. Today's topic is the art of the sell. And sales is both a huge topic and a topic people really like to avoid. Why is that? Well, we tend to have a very superficial, basic impression of sales when we first think of it, right? And it's become kind of a tarnished, term, right? Did you notice just now as I was talking about the different things that my friend had noticed on the computer? Did you notice yourself starting to notice those things as well? Did you? Yeah. Well, that's a form of autosuggestion. And that is where we're going to go today on sort of the second psychological levels of selling, right? Now, how did I first get into sales? Even though I'm more of a strategist now, a big part of what I've always done has been selling, right? Because whenever you're in a business or whenever you run a business, at some point you have to generate revenue, and all revenue essentially starts at the point of sale. So my own story is I was sort of pushed into sale. The very first job I had was at Future Shop. Did anybody remember Future Shop? Future Shop was a gym. And my job there, when I was 15, I got a job there. And my job was to call people up. I would get several of the white pages. This is shows you how old I am, right? This is the white pages. We used to pull them out and go through a list and just call people up and say, hi, are you interested in a membership at Future Shop or Future World or Future, what am I saying? Fitness World. Wow. Fitness World, right? So you try to sell people memberships on the phone, and it was basically a numbers game. I mean, you would have to make, I don't know, 100 calls maybe to get one or two people that were interested. Um, and that was probably just because they happened to be looking for a gym membership, right? So that was my first introduction. And sales were always kind of the easiest jobs to get because they would typically pay you straight commission, right? So another job I had a few years later was at Filter Queen. If you don't know what Filter Queen is, this was in 1990. Okay, so 30 years ago. This was right after my Save On Foods job that you may have heard from a previous video. I've had a few of them. So, anyways, Filter Queen was in 1990. This was a $1,500 vacuum. Okay, and to put this in perspective, you could buy a new car back then for probably like $7,000 or $8,000, right? So I used to have to go around. Actually, what Filter Queen did is they had a scam going, right? What they would do is they would do these sort of like contests, right? Or prizes, and they would do a massive mail out to the prizes. And top prize was a vacation. Second prize was a color TV, and the third place prize would be a free carpet shampoo, right? The catch with the carpet shampoo was that I had to come in or one of the guys did, and demonstrate how the Filter Queen vacuum worked. So nobody ever won the vacation, and nobody ever won the color TV. All anybody ever won was the free carpet shampooing and the Filter Queen demonstration, right? So I went about this, and the guys that sort of initiated me into the job, they were great. They really would get you excited about this vacuum. And I started off on this path, right? And I would go from one place to another, and I would not sell, and I would not sell, and I would not sell anything. And I never really believed in the product I was selling. I always thought, man, it's a vacuum, right? You could get a decent vacuum for $100 or $200. Here I am trying to sell this for $1,500 with a payment plan. And of course, my commission on one of them was $500, but my commission was the negotiation, right? So if somebody said $1,500 is too much, I'll pay $1,300. Well, that $200 would come out of my commission, right? So back then, I really had a rudimentary understanding of sales. I really thought, okay, well, you have to work on your pitch, right? So I would practice my pitch down. And this is kind of like the very first level of sales. You understand your pitch. You got to know everything. You got to be able to communicate everything about this vacuum. You got to be, not shy. Obviously, you have to be able to talk to people, and you have to get it all out there, right? And my pitch sounded pretty good. I was saying all the right things, and my success was mediocre, right? I sold, I don't know, I think I sold 2 in a month. I made something like $750, and then I found something new and moved on to that. But what I wasn't understanding at the time, and most people never really get past that level of sales, right, is that you can't talk at people. It's the difference between a good singer and a great singer, right? A good singer, if you've ever seen a good singer, you could see them on a cruise ship or in a casino or whatever. They have a great vocal range. They move around, they do the part, right? But if you've ever seen a great singer, like search for the video. If you've ever seen this, it's what's that name of that band that does that? They do the Sound of Silence. I'm forgetting the guy's name. Ivan, can you look it up for me? What's the name of the band that does the Sound of Silence?
Is there Simon and Garfunkel like that?
Well, they did the original, but there's a guy that does a remake of it. I think it's the same band that did The Sickness.
Right.
Bald guy, earrings. Ivan's going to look him up for me. But the point is, there's a big difference between superficially achieving everything you want to achieve, and there's another level, right? And great singers, they have that other level. Do you know?
Yeah.
Who is it?
1 second. It's just Disturbed.
Disturbed. That's it. Okay, so go watch the video of Disturbed singing The Sound of Silence. And Yeah, he's got a great voice, right? But he has a way of really transmitting emotion, connecting emotion, controlling your feelings, right? That's what I didn't understand in the beginning. So since then, I mean, I've gone into businesses, obviously, right? And selling has been a big part. And I've sold, I don't know, over the last 25 years, probably, I don't know, probably $50 million worth of goods or services. That's a ballpark guess, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, somewhere around there, though, right? But it took me 5 years, at least, maybe even longer, to really understand the different levels, right? It took me years to understand the different levels. So, like I said, I've always been a pretty decent talker, right? So, like I said, the initial phase, I was able to just recite all the benefits and stuff like that, get the pitch out there without stumbling over it or forgetting things or anything like that, right? That wasn't good enough, though. That was only good enough to be mediocre. Um, the second level, as I evolved into a second level, I learned how to deal with objections, right? So I learned how to, when I figured out what the key objections would be, and this is after vacuums, right? This was on to other stuff, like I would work at Pepsi and places like that. And so first I learned the pitch, then I learned to deal with objections, but you're still only mediocre. Like if your picture of somebody in sales is, a fast talking guy, hey, yeah, let me put you into this. Hey, what's it going to take to put you into this ride today? That's amateur hour, that stuff, right? Real sales, everything that you've ever purchased has been sold, right? And maybe it's not by an individual convincing you, but it's put into an environment, or it's displayed, or it's communicated through other means that you're not even completely aware of, right? So after that, I continued to develop and I continued to see how the process worked, right? And people, when you're selling, let's say you're selling, Walmart's one of the biggest companies in the world. Okay, I've sold to Walmart, right? But when you're selling to Walmart, you're not selling to Walmart, you're selling to a person, right? You're selling to a person within Walmart. And that person makes decisions based on, their pressure points, the input that they've had, and ultimately it's the childlike emotional response that we have, right? When I was describing a pet to you, did you find yourself feeling a little bit emotional? Did you find yourself recalling some of those feelings that you might have had with a special pet? These are the sort of things that you're able to do, right? Real selling is zeroing in on what a person's emotions are and seeing where you want those emotions to go, deciding where those emotions are going to go. And I know this sounds very manipulative, and to a large degree it is very manipulative. And one of the ways I've dealt with this is I never want to sell something to a person that's going to be negative for them, right? Like and again, I see that as amateur hour, right? I would rather take away a sale. If I'm going to sell somebody something and they're going to lose their job over it, or it's absolutely a bad fit for them, and it's going to be a one-time thing and then I'm out, I won't even do that. I won't bother. I don't need to. You don't need to. Again, amateur hour, right? That's desperate stuff. The real smart game in sales is to establish a relationship and then cultivate the relationship, right? So I learned that I was talking at people and not talking with people. That's what I learned, right? So I evolved my process some more, and I would talk to people and I would understand a little bit about them, right? And a lot of buyers, especially when you get to places like Walmart and Loblaws, those buyers are very guarded, right? They are trained in how to deal with people like me coming in. They have barriers up. They have certain things they want to extract from you. So you really have to work. And most people will buy things through a childlike sense of pleasure or to avoid pain, right? So, and let's get down to a little bit more of that in a second, but I'm going to show you why most of the information you get on sales, and don't worry, all of this is going to come back to COVID in a minute. Most of the information you get on sales is a bunch of bullshit, right? Okay. So 11 ways to master the art of selling. So the only thing this is selling is a book for you, right? Let's see what they consider mastering the art of selling. Develop your curiosity. Before you enter into any new sales experience, make sure you bring with you an attitude of positive anticipation and enthusiasm. Anticipate learning something new, whether it's about your potential client or about the product itself. Be enthusiastic about learning experiences in your daily life and keep your mind open as to what experiences might apply in future selling situations. Okay, again, this is kind of like really sort of basic, it's kind of dead end stuff. I mean, yeah, if you're building a connection with somebody, you want to be open and you don't want to be enthusiastic in a false way, though. Have realistic expectations. Have realistic expectations for yourself. Practice, drill, and rehearse the strategies until they become a natural part of your speech. Yeah. I mean, again, they're giving you a very shallow introduction, right? Allow yourself time to adapt material to your own style in order to create a genuine presentation. Okay, that part's good. Be patient with yourself. Don't expect to be a winner 100% of the time. That is absolutely true, actually. I mean, whatever you're doing, right? You have to accept failure and rejection constantly without getting discouraged by it. And the real people that are successful, and I'm just going to say successful, not just in sales, but in anything, are the people that can just continue to persevere despite negative setbacks, right? And we're going through one of those right now, right? Keep an open mind and welcome change. I mean, most of this stuff is just, placemat type things you'd find in a fortune cookie. Rehearse, perform, and critique your new skills. Again, right? And this is this is mostly the advice that you will get. But what I would say is, don't think of yourself in sales. Sales is a dead end. As sales is a process that happens, right? There's a sale, you've sold something, something's been purchased. You're not a salesperson. Think of yourself as a communicator. That is essentially what you're doing. All sales is communication. You are communicating with people. The more effectively you can communicate, the better your results are going to be, and the happier they will be with you. That's another thing we have to understand. Most people actually want to be sold. I want to be sold. I want to be blown away by stuff that I see, right? I want stuff. People want things, right? They want to buy things. They want to add things to their life. They want to add things to their job. They want to be successful in their job. Like if you're selling in a business way, like if it's business to business, then people want things that are going to make their life easier, that are going to make them more successful, that's going to be a hit for them, right? That are going to make them look smart. People have a lot of little motivators, and you have to understand them. You have to get through their barriers, and you have to take a psychological approach. One of the ways you can do that is engage in initial conversation with them, right? Talk to them about seemingly banal, trivial type stuff, right? And it's, that's kind of an expected thing. Everybody makes small talk at the beginning of, say, a presentation or a meeting or whatever it is, right? But it's not so hard to steer that small talk into a direction that's going to start to reveal things about them, right? For example, people will often use words, and you can solicit these directly from them, right? Like, let's say we're talking about a computer system for somebody's business, right? And you can ask them, yeah, how long have you been doing this? Oh, yeah, I remember this back in the day, right? I remember Windows 95. Yeah, different things have come and gone. Yeah, what was the best product that you ever purchased, right? Oh, I purchased, I don't know, let's say they purchased DOS. Let's go way back. Yeah, I purchased the new DOS system. Really? How did you know when that was going to be successful? Oh, it cut our working hours down to 50%. It improved efficiency. People were able to leave early and spend time with their family, blah, 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 blah. And then you move on. But meanwhile, you're logging this information, right? What are the important things to him, right? How does he know when something's successful? Efficiency matters to him. His personal life matters to him, right? Saving time matters to him. So these are the things that we would engage later in the conversation when we're talking about them, right? One of the key features of our software program, I would say, is more so than the cost, is just the efficiency. This cuts down, the troubleshooting cuts down on everyone's time. You know, you're not going to have those weekends ruined, those long weekends ruined. You know, you're not going to miss practices. You're going to be home at a regular time, that sort of thing, right? So we already know, we've already established. People will give you the clues on the things that mean something to them, right? In the course of conversation, even if they're guarded, even if they know you're there with something, they will still lay out the keys to open the door. They plant them out there, and it's your job to observe, log them, and then find the appropriate way to use them. Another thing is fear. Unfortunately, most people in a working environment, or even just a home environment, if you're, trying to engage with, a home-based consumer, most people are motivated to a degree by fear, right? Like I said, people are either motivated to avoid pain or a fear of something, or to gain pleasure and indulge that childlike sense. The fear is the stronger motivator, though, right? I mean, you could even combine the two of them. Well, we'll get into other stuff if somebody wants to have any specifics. I'll be happy to engage. But a lot of the things you can do, right, are you can elicit what their fear is by using other people's fear, right? For example, let's say right now you were talking to somebody in the, I don't know, let's think of an industry that's out there. Logistics, right? Okay, let's say you were talking to somebody about their logistics needs, right? And you would simply bring up the fear of the situation with somebody else and say, yeah, well, I can tell you, I've been in dozens of meetings over the last 2 weeks, and there's real concern in the industry. There's real concern that they're going to be overwhelmed with deliveries to certain accounts, and they're going to be frozen out of trucking lanes. Options are not going to be available. Storage is filling up fast. Some people are just on the outside, and if they haven't got those things locked up in place, they've been expressing to me that they're extremely concerned about that, right? So you would elicit these fear points from them, right? And you would do it in a way that, I mean, you would never just come out and ask and say, are you afraid that this might happen? Because they will never admit that they are. And businesses, especially, whenever you're talking to them, how's everything going? You're almost never going to go, oh man, it sucks. Our sales are down 5%. We're losing customers. Our competitors are just much better than us. You never get that, right? You always get, oh, things are going pretty good, or great, or they'll zero in on something that's doing really well, and you'll get that, right? But there is always concerns. Nobody is ever 100% happy in any kind of business or any kind of situation. There is always concerns. There's always barbarians at the gate, right? There's always a threat. There's always a threat or a perceived threat. And if there isn't a perceived threat, well, then some people will fabricate a threat, right? And what we see is, how do you know when this is, so far we're talking about services and goods, right? But the sales process, as I've said, is the communication process. The two are linked, inextricably linked. So how do you know when you are being sold, right? When are you being sold by something that doesn't have a product, right? By someone that's just selling information? Well, there's some very easy ways to tell. are they appealing to your emotion, right? We're seeing that kind of with COVID, aren't we? We're seeing images of exhausted nurses or people outside banging pots and pans. What's that supposed to elicit, right? That's supposed to elicit that childlike enthusiasm. Yay, let's support them. Or hospitals being overwhelmed. Oh my God, fear, panic, right? What else? I mean, we've seen this in the past too, right? Like, whenever somebody's trying to get money for Africa, you always see kids, don't you? You always see little kids that are starving, right? So, I mean, it's a very simple way to play up on people's emotions, but the reason you fall for it is because you don't immediately see the sales process in action. I mean, you do with the donations to a degree, but some people, particularly women, just saying, even if they know it's coming, they're still vulnerable to it, right? But yeah, you really have to watch this in the media and the government, right? People's primary concern is safety, right? Especially when there's something shocking that happens. People want to hunker down. They want to be safe, right? And that's why you hear Justin Trudeau saying, we all need to stay safe, right? Because he's been coached on this and he's echoing those points, right? And the same thing, and the media is really supporting this, right? They're giving us fear. That's why we got big numbers out there in the beginning, right? We could see as many as, 1 million people dead in Canada, right? Or 5% of the global population potentially, right? Yeah, okay. I mean, and everything that's convincing has elements of truth to it, right? As pandemics do. Pandemics have killed a lot of people, but you were being steered off the facts and the figures and the rationale into the fear and the emotion. And whenever you're steered into the fear and the emotion, you can sense that you are being manipulated, right? So there you go. I just wanted to leave that thought with you and show you that, you know what? And here's another thing to take away. If you're, that doesn't mean that you're less intelligent. You're probably more intelligent if you're susceptible to visualization and embedded commands and psychological triggers. You're probably more intelligent because those things work best on people that are more imaginative. Like if you're talking to some dumbass that's been high for the last 20 years, what do you mean, man? I never had no vacation, they can't imagine that kind of stuff, right? They're impulse driven, and that's a whole other story, but whatever. So anyways, that's the tip. This is the art of the sell, and you can apply it in your own life. I would say do it ethically, but also watch for it. Watch for it in people that aren't necessarily holding a product or a service. They're still trying to manipulate you though, okay? So I will leave it there for the COVID cast. Hit me, Ivan. That is the art of the sell. I am Rick Richards. Let's stand together. And if we do, can't nobody stand against us.